Alright, so for the Alani build, the trick with Alani is that the more damage you do, the quicker you build your osmosis stacks and the more healing you can do. Looking at it, she's got a couple skills here. Skill number one is Riptide. That's nice. You can push the enemy away. It also helps you to speed up as you travel through it, so you can run down enemies with that. And I'm going to show you how to use that later, as well as Geyser. Geyser is what puts everybody in the bubble. There's a specific build that I do with the Helix on that. And the ultimate does a lot of damage. It's really good, but does have a slower spawn time, so people can usually get out of it. So I'll talk about that when we're doing the Helix. Alright, before we cover the Helix, I want to get into the gear. If you've seen my other videos, my support characters, the gear is pretty close to the same. So I do have Alani build up here. It has Alani's specific legendary, and then an attack damage and attack speed. She does do a decent amount of damage, but doesn't help to increase the speed and the attack. Now with her Emulan tincture, it does increase her heal power, increases her speed even more, and then the Wellspring, which is nice, adds an additional 15% over the next 4 seconds, which is really cool. That helps out. If I just want to buff everybody's damage, then I'm going to go back to my Solar Sustainer and Oath of the Sustained combination. So I turn on the Solar Sustainer first. 14% attack damage, 5% attack damage for me, and then anybody I heal gets a 5.5 for them and myself. Both of the sustain keeps that going by adding some of the 2.5% of damage dealt goes to allies as healing. So depending on who I'm playing with, what mode I'm playing with, whether it be incursion or meltdown, I'll go between the two. But if you don't have those legendaries, cooldown is always another good option for Alani. That way you can get your abilities back to back and keep spamming those. I like playing a little more forward with the healers. I find that with a good team, you don't always have to heal, so that you can also do damage while healing, and that helps out. All right, so looking at Alani's Helix, number one, I'm always going to go right. And I know a lot of people like going left and go with the Soothing Mist, but you just will not get as much healing as you will with the Splash Zone. Trust me, go right and then play with it. But like, look at it. You're going to have a huge circle area of effect with Splash Zone, and you'd be surprised how big it is. I hit the entire team all the time with the 360 health, and that's a burst heal, so it really helps out. You can bring people back from the brink, and the cool thing with Splash Zone is it changes the way you play Alani and the way that you use the Geyser. Instead of occasionally using it and trying to catch people in a bubble, you're going to find that you spam this thing all the time, and you could use it back behind enemy lines. You could use it way back by your base after you get double thralls. You're going to use it all the time. Sometimes you're going to use it strictly for the burst heal effect. Sometimes you're going to use it, just for the try to catch people in the bubble. So for number two, I always go right. You're just not that often that you get 2 people up, so I can't really justify going left. I don't see that it makes a huge difference. It's kind of a weak Helix for Alani, but I go right, and then anybody that's doing damage there also shares a portion of that to nearby targets, but it's not even that much. So with number 3, I normally go Pressure Wash. It just seems more useful. Most of the time, if I'm hitting, if I get the triple stacks when I'm full, I don't keep them that much, so I can't recommend using Kinetic Diffuser, which it does help her speed out significantly, but I'm not running around with full stacks. Usually if I get all 3 stacks of them, then I'm looking for somebody to hit, and then I'm going to use my torrents so I can fill them back up again. So I'm not going on the mutation on this one. I'm not going right because I'm not using the Wellspring unless I have all 3 of the bubbles filled. So not using that. Can't really justify using the Kinetic Diffusion. So go left on this one, and maybe you can hit some stuff further away, because it is kind of frustrating when you're hitting somebody and they just get out of range. So for number 4, I used to always use Wave Shock, and now I've seen to always go Wet Blanket. I like using the slow on this one. It lasts for 3 seconds, and then later on, you're going to extend that even further. Wave Shock used to do like 84 damage per second, which was cool because you could throw that down in a line of minions and just completely take them out. You can't do that anymore. I mean, it does help, but usually you throw down that Riptide and people are looking to run out of it. But if you use the Wet Blanket, now you're slowing them down, and it makes it easier for your team to get that kill, or you can throw it out there in front of you if somebody's trying to escape you, and you can run them down. So always go left on this one. So looking at number 5, I always go at Extremophile. Like I said, the decrease for 1 stack doesn't apply because I'm not using 1 stack. I'm always trying to fill it up with all 3, and then I'm going to hit somebody. So that extra 25% comes in really handy when you have a Montana or a Kelvin or somebody else really tanky on your team. You get all 3 of those, you can hit them with that. If they still need more, then you can hit them with the geyser, and you can get them back to full health very, very quickly. So for number 6, I always go Refresher. This works out really good because you'll be surprised how often that you're just running through your Riptide, and that was going to increase your osmosis stacks. So that's really useful, especially like if I die and I go back. I can usually use the Riptide twice on the way back to my team. So by the time I get to my team, I've got 3 osmosis stacks. I can hit somebody for the full health on that. I can hit somebody with a geyser. I get the whole team burst healed right back and ready to go. Channeling doesn't make sense because you're not catching people in bubbles that often. And if you are, then they're probably not that good of a team. Number 7, always go to the right. I mean, bottom line. The attack speed, that is going to help with the cooldown that you picked earlier. Or I'm sorry, that is going to help with building your stacks, but you're already building those pretty quick. So if you go right, you can decrease your cooldown. And if you're decreasing your cooldown by half a second with every hit from your torrents, you just can't pick anything else. On this one, I always go Old Trustworthy. It increases the AoE for your geyser. There's a lot of pinch points. You can throw this down. I've heard good arguments for the going the left because it decreases the eruption time, so you're more likely to catch people. Left or right, you could kind of go either one. Just depends on how you are. I always go right. But the pressure valve doesn't make sense. The geyser itself doesn't do that much damage. The good thing about the geyser is how it traps people. Now for this one, I always go stagnant pools. Because I'm picking the slow, it already does 3 seconds. Now you're doubling the amount of time that your Riptide's out there. So if you've got a melee going on, you can throw your Riptide out there and completely slow the other team down. And there's a whole area that's basically just, it's just a hassle for them to stay and try to fight. And then your whole number of 6 seconds. That's a lot of time if you're focus firing and you're a good team to just annihilate them. Now for number 10 on Alani, it really depends on how you are, how your team's doing, what mode you're playing. You can really pick just about any of these. I'm not a real big fan of Deep Song, but if you find that your team's still needing that extra health, you could pick that one. But the other 2, it's probably a 50-50 for me. If I want to use the extra slowing effect, I could do that, and then you can hit them with the Riptide. There's 6 seconds of slow with that, followed by your ultimate. There's another 5 seconds on top of that. You're just going to wipe out an entire team, and that's fun. Transpiration, you're using the slowing effect from the Riptide. You can use your ultimate, do some damage. You get your Riptide right back again, and then you've also got your burst heal right back again. So resetting the cooldowns has a pretty good advantage too. So it really just depends at this point in the game which one you're going with. As far as me, I'd recommend left or middle. The right it doesn't seem to do that much at this point in the game. But there might be, depending on who's on your team, how you guys are doing, there might be a good point for using Deep Song. But that's my Alani build. I hope it helps everybody out, and I know some other people have some different builds out there, and if you got some other suggestions, then throw it down in the comments below.